welcome back, and thank you so much for watching the films about the Rendlesham incident. US Air Force veteran John Burroughs, who was there, also reaches out to say thank you, YouTube viewers, for your support, and telling him that he does deserve all the medical treatment and care that he deserves because he was exposed to something strange. Now, another enormous thing because of you viewers. You know I say the truth is out there because of you. That's true. You actually know more than anybody about what's going on. And a number of people have contacted me with bits and pieces that I know fit into the jigsaw, especially people who were involved in the Cobra Mist over the horizon radar story. What they hinted at is fascinating. They spent a lot of time and money looking at why Cobra Mist didn't work. RCA built it. I didn't know that. Thank you for telling me. And they did find some problems. There was FOD, bits of metal left around the site. They looked at every wire and joint. They spent millions eliminating that the system itself had a problem. But you have to remember something. This isn't a unique Cobra Mist system in Orford Ness. There's 3 of them. There's one exact copy in the US, which works fine. And there's an exact copy in Turkey, which works fine. Only the one in Orford Ness didn't work. Now, that doesn't really make much sense. So kind viewers have told me we looked at everything that could possibly be wrong with the way that the Cobra Mist at Orford Ness was made, and we didn't find anything. That's why a high-level team, and it wasn't just Stanford, they had the Ministry of Defense, they had Cambridge people, they had US Air Force people, they had RCA who'd built it, looking at it. It was only out of desperation that they brought in Stanford's research to be very objective at looking at what the problem was. And it seems to me that the most obvious reason it didn't work was the Soviets knew about it. Possibly they had espionage inside the system. They knew exactly the frequencies they were using, and they had some device behind the Iron Curtain in Central Eastern Europe that was blocking it, or maybe trawlers in the North Sea that were sending out countermeasures that would block the over-the-horizon radar. But then why wouldn't they do that in the Turkey system? The Turkey one, it's a complicated system of bouncing radars off the ionosphere and looking at a great distance, and the signal is extremely weak. So it is possible to block it, but that one wasn't blocked, the US one wasn't blocked, and they're exactly the same system. Only the Orford Ness one didn't work. And that's true. And Stanford research started having a smoking gun, and that was the interference appeared to be coming from Suffolk, from the county of England where Orford Ness is, and more specifically round the Bentwaters, Woodbridge, Rendlesham Forest, Bordsey area. And a number of SRI, not the entire team, but a small group, stayed at Bentwaters and at Martlesham Heath. They were still being funded, and they saw that there was something going on in that area which they were fascinated by. And here's another big thing that you, the viewers, have told me that I can share with you, and that is people have been seeing strange lights in the sky in the Orford Ness, Woodbridge area for years, centuries even, long before the US Air Force, long before the RAF. There's always been stuff seen in that area. And an archaeologist pointed me in the direction of looking at Sutton Hoo. Now, Sutton Hoo is an incredible burial site dating from centuries ago, and it's right next to Bordsey Manor. Was it possible that that area has some special influence? Did it have a religious or spiritual significance because of strange stuff that goes on there? I think that's possibly true. And so, did Stanford research recognize its history, know there was something odd going on in the area, and wanted to investigate it? I'm very intrigued by that idea. So what is going on in Suffolk? Well, there's an enormous clue, and that also comes from the Condign Report. So the Condign Report was the MOD's way of summing up all the UFO and then changing it to UAP reports that had occurred in Britain. This author called Ron, and I'm not going to tell you his surname because he's probably still alive and very elderly and doesn't want to be bothered, came to some startling conclusions that have been criticized. He doesn't talk about flying saucers. He doesn't talk about aluminum craft. He specifically, if he points the finger at anything, all the way back from Foo Fighters in World War II to the more current sightings, he talks about unexplained aerial phenomenon, UAP. And I think that's very interesting that the US Navy and the US are calling UFOs UAP these days, because most of the sightings are these amorphous, difficult to define lights in the sky. And maybe there's an explanation. And here's a bit of a personal story about people who are involved in UAP research. You will remember I worked closely with Paul Devereaux, who is probably the world's leading expert on Earth lights. And he describes Earth lights as very strange, not always manifest as balls, sometimes with square corners, sometimes actual cubes, sometimes black. Earth lights are strange, and Earth lights are interpreted all over the world where they are seen culturally. So in the Far East, they're seen as the severed heads of women who died in childbirth. That makes perfect sense. And here they're seen as UFOs. So when you read the conclusion of the Condign Report, Ron, the author for the MOD, an RAF scientist, basically says that UAP is a Earth light type manifestation. Now, we don't know what Earth lights are. Are they things that have come through a portal from the future? Are they aliens from a different planet? Are they something to do with our Earth? We don't know. They're difficult to study. One of the strangest stories that Paul Devereaux told me is in Wales, where a light appeared, probably an earthquake light. People from one side of it saw it, and people on the other side of the light saw nothing. It was as if it was polarized. And he also tells a story of seeing black spheres, as if they're just have no light. And these black balls have been seen over lakes in Scandinavia. Paul's first sighting of an Earth light was like a door with right angles, an orange floating mass that was seen in the sky. That was, it's rare to see rectangular shapes. People have seen cubes. People have seen spheres inside cubes. This is odd. There's something really strange going on, and we don't understand it. We need more research. And that's what I think SRI was doing, based at Bentwaters, looking at what was actually happening. Maybe the Suffolk, Rendlesham, Orford Ness area, the Sutton Hoo area of that part of England is a portal, is weak. Things appear. There's something about it. Is it time? Is it space? Or is it just a manifestation of our Earth? I don't know, but SRI were interested in it, looking at understanding or controlling the phenomenon, the UAP manifestation, because possibly it could be weaponized. That's what John Burroughs thinks, and that's what I think. So I'd like to reach out and thank everybody in the comments who have sent me stuff, especially people who know what lies underneath Orford Ness. You really have been a champion, especially people who have been into laboratories at Bawdsey Manor. I can't share your name or what they've told me, but it pretty well confirms that Bawdsey did have advanced research and that Orford Ness was definitely an important place. And I'd had a British telecom engineer tell me what was going on at Rendlesham Heath, which was the GPO, or British Telecom Research Centre. They had spare laboratories. They definitely had other contractors, military contractors, using their research facilities. It is a kind of a place where, okay, it's a private company, British Telecom, but they're very connected to the UK government. And it was seen as a laboratory for advanced stuff. SDI, Star Wars research, was done there. Oh, and here's another question that people have asked, and I failed you in answering the question. Smart viewers will point out that Ronald Reagan and the SDI, or Star Wars program, didn't start until after the Rendlesham incident. That is publicly true, but here's what I completely failed to tell you. SDI, or a shield, was started in the 70s under the Carter administration, and very much Edward Teller lobbied the US government to build this X-ray laser system. And Ronald Reagan inherited that program. The money had already been spent. Reagan was just introducing it to the public. There's no point in saying to our enemies, we're going to, in the future, work on a system which could stop your missiles. No, they had it already. And they were just announcing that possibly that was something they were working on when it already was in place. I mean, it makes sense. So that's why there was so much money slushing around for Project Green Glow and other weird stuff, Marconi and Cobra Mist, because from the Carter years, there was funding for advanced DARPA, it became DARPA, projects to look at exotic stuff. And as John Burroughs said, this all came out of a cultural thing post-Vietnam. Vietnam was such a trauma, in my humble opinion, for America, that the US wanted to look at other ways of fighting wars. That's why people stared at goats. That's why MK Ultra started. Fascinating that it was transferred to the UK. I didn't know that. I must dig into that one. The US didn't want to go out and fight wars in a medieval way with men who died in jungles with guns. Was there a better way? And Reagan's idea of building a shield was interesting. I mean, I personally think it very much undermined that mutually assured destruction, and we lived in a period of great uncertainty. People were terrified of what Ronald Reagan was doing because it disrupted the balance of power. But in the end, it worked. Mainly because it meant Russia had to come up with a system to counter SDI. And in fact, the way that they did it was also terrifying. They just said, if 1% of our missiles get through the US shield, we'll just build more missiles. So for a short time, the world was really on a knife edge. I was there. I was there doing news stories at the Reykjavik conference, where Reagan and Gorbachev went off into little huddles without radio mics and without interpreters to chat. And then they came back and made a statement. I remember British very senior officials holding their breath, wanting to know what Mikhail Gorbachev and Ronald Reagan were going to say after their private meeting. Were they going to say, we are at war? You know, was Reagan going to say, they are an empire of evil? Was Gorbachev going to say, our only answer is a preemptive strike? Everybody held their breath. But in fact, the Soviet Union collapsed and we got rid of mutually assured destruction, although I think we're in a bit of denial about it now. I worry today that we have almost forgotten the true horror of nuclear weapons, and we're starting considering this horrible term, tactical nuclear weapons, where we could use a small one. No, don't go down that route. It's truly terrifying. Anyway, thank you very much. I hope you're enjoying this. I need to move on in my life. and get a life away from Rendlesham Forest, but I'm sure it will continue. There are many more questions to answer. I certainly don't know everything, but I hope that trying to tie a timeline from World War II right through to Rendlesham was interesting. It is not all the answers, but I think it points towards some interesting facts. So thank you very, very much for watching. And just stay tuned to my channel, because this is the kind of thing, as an old science researcher, I really love digging into and diving into. There's many more mysteries out there that need an objective, big questions asked about them. And you will see it here. And because of you, the truth is out there.